Good morning, everybody. It's Mary Grace Wallace, one of the genealogists here with Family Tree Nuts. You'll never believe where I am. I am in Deadwood, South Dakota. I am standing at the gravesite. I'm going to show you of actual gravesite of Calamity Jane. And you can see behind me, Wild Bill. Okay, we'll get to him. Martha Jane Cannary. She was born May 1st, 1852 in Princeton, Missouri, but she died down the road here in Terry, South Dakota, August 1st, 1903. She was the eldest of 6 children. Her mother died when Calamity Jane was young on their way to Montana. Her father moved them from Missouri to, actually they ended up in Wyoming, but her mother died in Montana. She was an American frontierswoman. She was an acquaintance of Wild Bill Hickok. She, we'll get more on him later. She was late in her life. She appeared in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. She appeared in the Pan American Exposition. She was known to have compassion to others, especially the sick and the needy. Especially as a young lady, that's sort of how she got her name, Calamity Jane. And I'll tell you about that. And here in Deadwood, she also showed compassion to the sick and needy during a smallpox breakout. So like I said, as a young girl, Calamity's mother died young, and she ended up taking care of her younger siblings in Wyoming. She worked as a dishwasher, as a waitress, as a dance hall girl, some things that we might do today if that should happen to us. But then other things she did, she drove an ox team. She became a scout for the Army. She was a nurse. In 1874, she claimed to become a scout for Fort Russell, which was a U.S. Army base in Cheyenne. During that time, she was also an on-again, off-again prostitute. Her name, Calamity Jane, claims to come from one Captain Egan, whom she rescued when he was shot during the Indian uprising. And when he was about to fall off his horse, she heard the shot. She saw him about to go off his horse. She was able to gather him up, get him up on her horse, and get him to safety. During the time of his recovery, he said to her, I name you Calamity Jane, the heroine of the plains, and she kept that name forever. And what about Deadwood? How did she make it to Deadwood? Deadwood is just behind me, down below. Beautiful town. I don't know if you can see it behind the trees, but I'm up on the hill in Mount Moriah Cemetery, where Calamity is resting. And she came to Deadwood with the Newton Jenny party and the Charlie Utter party. And she came into Rapid City into 1875. She was hoping to make some money off the gold that was found here in the Black Hills. And she ended up making friends with one of the very prominent big-time madams here, Dora Dufran. And she occasionally works for her. Jane was also friends with Wild Bill and Charlie Utter, as we have recently just told you. There were some rumors that Jane came to Deadwood with a daughter. I've looked at several sources. There's a lot of discrepancies. I will let you decide. There's also other rumors, including Wild Bill. Did she marry Wild Bill in Montana? Oh, you'll have to look that up. But there are rumors that she and Bill had a daughter, and that was called the McCormick theory. You'll have to look it up. It's pretty interesting. No disrespect to Jane. We don't know the truth. It was so long ago. I will leave that up to all of you. In 1876, with the outbreak of smallpox, Jane used her nursing skills and she took care of all of the victims. And that is one thing that throughout all the history and all the research that I did, Jane was known for her compassion for others. And so I want to make sure that that is really known, which is kind of a contrast to what she was really known for. And you're all asking me, why haven't you mentioned that she wore men's clothing? That was a big, big thing for Jane. She dressed like a man. Wow. Jane, she was ahead of her time. She wore pants and she wore pantsuits, and sometimes she just definitely looked like a man. And yes, that was definitely forward thinking for Jane. In her final years, in 1893, Jane appeared as a storyteller in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And by that time she was depressed. She had become an alcoholic, and things were just not going well for her. There is proof that she was quite a heavy drinker when she was younger, but Jane really needs to be remembered for her compassion and for all of her help that she did for the sick and for the needy. She had bought a ranch in Miles City on the Yellowstone River in Montana, and she operated that as an inn until she was about 51 years old, and she made it back here to Deadwood, and she found her friend, the madam, and she came here and she was working for the madam. She was doing laundry and cooking, and she was on a train when she eventually died. She was on a train. She was 51 years old. She'd been heavily drinking by witness accounts, and she had a stomach ache. They got her to the doctor. She died the very next day of pneumonia and inflammation of the bowels. So, Calamity Jane. She is a calamity, but we want to remember Calamity Jane. She was quite notorious for her time for wearing men's clothing, but what we really want to remember her for is all of her compassion for the sick and for the needy and for all the help that she gave to other people, because that is her truth. And a good friend to Wild Bill. That, more to come. This has been a pleasure. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to share this story with you here in Deadwood, South Dakota. Remember, family tree nuts. Let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree.